Ladies and gentlemen, that was a horrible response. Good afternoon. Much better. Give yourselves a hand. For those of you who have yet to meet, I'm Rick Kidder, Chief Operating Officer of One South Coast Chamber, former co-CEO of One South Coast Chamber, so I consider myself a CEO in recovery. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from some gifted young students from New Bedford High School. You were greeted by New Bedford High's talented jazz combo as you entered today, and the jazz combo is under the direction of Tim Mason. Let's give them a hand. And now, as you finish up your lunches, you will hear a medley performed by the New Bedford High School Choir. The chorus is an after-school choral group under the direction of Lynn Marie Dandino. The members of the chorus are participants in other performing arts groups, including concert band, drama club, jazz band, concert chorale, and SATB show choir. They perform at music department-sponsored concerts and at local events. Let's welcome them.
Unless the basic guitar is playing with him. Makes a company jump when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. He is the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. And when he plays boogie woogie bugle, he's as busy as a buzzzy bee. And when he plays, he makes the company jump and A to the bar. He is the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. Doodly-yada, doodly-yada, toot-toot, he blows an A to the bar. He can't blow a note, he's playing with him. He makes the company jump when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. Every night and wakes them up and sing in the early light. They clap their hands and stamp their feet because they know how they play. When someone gives him a beat, he really breaks it up. When he plays reveille, he's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. A toot, a toot, a tootly out a toot, he blows an A to the bar. In boogie rhythm, he can't blow a note unless the bass and guitar is playing with him. And the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B.
If that doesn't wake you up after a wonderful lunch, I don't know what would. Let's give him a hand again. We are fortunate today to have numerous elected officials that have taken time out of their busy schedules to join us here today. Please give us a wave as I announce your name. Former Mayor John Bullard. Bristol County District Attorney Tom Quinn. State Representative Tony Cabral. And State Representative Paul Schmidt. Representing the New Bedford City Council, President Linda Morad. A guy I used to know, Ian Abreu. Ryan Pereira. Shane Burgo. Maria Giesta. Sean Oliver. Naomi Carney. Brad Markey. Derek Baptiste. Scott Lima, and Brian Gomes. Thank you all for being with us today. From the New Bedford School Committee, we have Bruce Oliveira, Christopher Cotter, Jack Livramento, Ross Grace, Colleen DeWicki, Melissa Costa. Thank you so much for being with us. If we have missed anyone, we sincerely apologize. Now I'm going to ask that the House dim the lights, and we hope to entertain you with the Mayor's video, a short video from Mayor John Mitchell. Mayor, I made this joke last year, but I'm going to make it again. That 4-minute video did more than you could do in your speech, so everybody is dismissed. It is now my pleasure to introduce Don Tropoli. At this time, I'd like to invite Don Tropoli, Senior Vice President and Business Banking Regional Manager from Massachusetts and Rhode Island, to the podium to introduce Mayor Mitchell on behalf of Webster Bank. Don?
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, elected officials, business leaders. My name's Don Tropoli. I manage business banking for Massachusetts and Rhode Island for Webster Bank. We at Webster are delighted to be with you again today for the 12th consecutive year as a partner in this annual Chamber and City event, and look forward to hearing from Mayor Mitchell on all the things happening to make New Bedford stronger and greater for everyone. And that video was just incredible, so I look forward to hearing the detail on that. At its core, Webster Bank's mission is to help businesses, individuals, and local government achieve their strategic financial goals. I'm sure it's not news to anyone in this room that over the last few months, there's been some challenges in the banking industry, especially for mid-sized banks like Webster. But despite those challenges, I'm pleased to report that Webster Bank grew $1.2 billion in loans and deposits in the first quarter, showing our continued support for businesses of all sizes, individuals, and our local businesses. We continue to bring expertise, ideas, capital, and sophisticated cash management tools to our local manufacturing, services, distribution, and seafood industries, helping them grow, create jobs, and export products overseas. We continue to help individuals purchase homes, plan for college, and plan for retirement. We also work closely with our local nonprofits who are making such an important and critical impact, especially during these difficult times. On behalf of all of us at Webster Bank, I'd like to thank Rick Kidder, Mike O'Sullivan, and all of the staff at the One South Coast Chamber for all their hard work in putting on such a great event. First elected in 2011, John Mitchell is New Bedford's 38th mayor. Mayor Mitchell has moved aggressively to reestablish New Bedford as one of the leading cities in the Northeast. Under Mayor Mitchell's leadership, the city has achieved both the highest bond rating and the highest high school graduation in the city's history, graduation rate in the city's history. Lowered crime by over 30%, secured hundreds of millions of dollars in new port investments, and positioned the city to become the leader in the emerging offshore wind industry. Prior to running for office, Mayor Mitchell was an assistant United States attorney in Boston and previously served as a federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C. in the Attorney General's Honor Program. The product of public schools, the mayor graduated from Harvard College and the George Washington Law School. He also served 6 years in the Army National Guard. He's married to Ann Partridge, a professor of medicine at the Harvard Medical School and a breast oncologist at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. They are proud parents of daughters Grace, Natalie, and Lauren, all New Bedford high whalers. Thank you, Mayor Mitchell, for your leadership and commitment to the city over this past decade. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Mitchell.
All right. Well, thank you, John, for that introduction, and many thanks to Rick Kidder and Mike O'Sullivan and the Chamber for another great job in organizing this annual event, and to Webster Bank for its enduring sponsorship and the fact that your deposits are going up, which is great for any bank these days. I would also like to thank Principal Bernadette Coelho for hosting us today. And Sue Richard and the New Bedford Cable Access team for that really exciting video. Nice job, guys. As well as New Bedford High School's select SSA chorus and jazz choir for their great performances that you just heard. I also want to acknowledge and thank City Council President Morad and City Councilors, school committee members, District Attorney Tom Quinn, our state and legislative delegation, Tony Cabral in particular, for the work they do to support New Bedford every single day. So I'm pleased that my wife Ann could be with me on this occasion, and I will seize the opportunity to proclaim for everyone just how proud I am of the work she does for women who have been diagnosed with breast cancer through both her direct care of patients and her leading research. She hates it when I say this, but she inspires me every day to raise my game. I regret that my youngest daughter, Lauren, could not be here. She's right down the hall now taking a test, and she told me to keep the noise down. So we'll try. Any assessment of the state of our city should start with an acknowledgement that we are in a period that continues to defy easy characterization. The times we live in are anything but placid or ordinary. Any number of national, state, and local economic metrics are positive despite our weathering a 100-year pandemic. Yet, not since the Cold War have we seen geopolitical tensions like those today. And not since the 1970s has the price of gas, or interest rates, or inflation come to dominate everyday conversation as they do now. Then there's all that's going on in the nation's capital, which I won't go into. All these trends have implications for life in New Bedford now, but they don't explain all that much about our local prospects or direction. Here's what defines New Bedford in 2023. A palpable sense that New Bedford is pointed in the right direction and solidly progressing. I have no doubt that in the long history of our city, 2023 will come to be seen as a year marked by the fulfillment of long-standing goals, big goals, whose positive consequences will matter for a long time to come. To be sure, we've talked about the improvement of the conditions we live in. Looking back over a decade, looking back all the way to a decade ago, the chronic symptoms of post-industrial decline were plain to see. Double-digit unemployment, precarious city finances, a school department under state monitoring, and a general sense that the city was unsafe. And here we are today with neighborhoods that are safer and cleaner, schools that are running the way they should, a higher and more stable bond rating, thousands more people with steady jobs, and a population back over 100,000. But 2023 is most notable because this year, we will have completed or are about to complete things that long seemed daunting, if not impossible. First and foremost, there's the offshore wind industry. We've worked tirelessly over the last decade to position New Bedford to become a leader in the industry because I believe it could create jobs here the way it did in port cities in Northern Europe. My assurance is that the industry would eventually take hold here, despite all the highly publicized setbacks in the US, increasingly we're met with this waiting for Godot skepticism, often with a look of, yeah, okay, Mayor, okay, that's coming. Well, I am proud to report that later this month, the first components for America's first commercial scale offshore wind project will arrive at the New Bedford Marine Commerce Terminal. I salute Klaus Moeller and his team at Vineyard Wind on this historic occasion and everyone who has supported our efforts to bring this industry to the city. And guess what? It's just getting started. So later this year, passenger rail service between New Bedford and Boston will resume. Along with every other elected official from southeastern Massachusetts since the 1990s, I've advocated for restoring that rail connection, and no one has been at it longer than Tony, although I hate to date you like that, Tony, but Tony's been at it from the very start. And now it's finally happening. It will be one more economic asset for the region, and yet another good reason to live here. This year, too, the finishing touches are being applied to the 40-year cleanup of New Bedford Harbor, America's first marine Superfund site, thanks to $73 million we received recently from the bipartisan infrastructure law. Now, many of us here will recall the harbor cleanup always seemed to be on the front page of the newspaper throughout the 1980s, and now finally, it's about to be done. I wish to thank the federal delegation for their work in passing the legislation, the dedicated EPA team, and our resilience director, Michelle Paul, for her coordinating efforts. Now, once the cleanup is over, we can proceed with the long-planned Riverwalk project, which will open up the north end to the Acushnet River, and that will be really, really cool. Then there's the Eversource site. Now, we all saw or heard about the demolition of the power plant back in January, and you saw it on the video. The same building that was going to be an aquarium and then later a casino. You remember. I wish I had a dime for every time someone said to me, hey, what's going to happen to that site? Well, now we know the answer. And thanks to the investor group headed up by Andrew Saunders and its partnership with the city, later this year it will be buzzing with activity as an offshore wind deployment site. It's getting done. How about the State Pier? For at least 30 years, we've stared at that vast parking lot by the water right across from downtown and have lamented. That site has so much potential. Now, like most people, I found it unacceptable that the state had allowed it to languish. I strongly believe that if we didn't own it, even if we didn't own it, we should figure out some way to get the state to do something about it. So we pulled together waterfront stakeholders to come up with a plan that garnered broad support, and then we advocated for it relentlessly, and eventually we secured the backing of the Baker administration. And as was announced in December, a local development team is now filling in the details for a mixed-use development in keeping with that plan, which will establish a fish offloading site that the public can actually see and interact with, continue ferry service, and create restaurant and retail facing the downtown. This is going to be a fantastic addition to the maritime sector and the restaurant scene alike. So yes, all these strategic initiatives are coming to fruition. And oh, by the way, that's not the whole list for 2023, I have to say. The restored First Baptist Church will open as a performing arts venue later this year. Bristol Community College's National Offshore Wind Institute, America's first offshore wind training institution, will open its doors on the waterfront later this summer. Nice job, President Laura Douglas. We secured the funding commitment this year to replace Massachusetts' oldest commercial airport terminal, which will put us in a much stronger position to attract and retain more regular commercial air service. After 5 years in dry dock, the Ernestina, as you saw, the official ship of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, just returned to New Bedford, fully restored. And then there's the bridge. By a show of hands, who's ever been stuck on the bridge? Okay, I don't even have to say the name of the bridge. We all know what I'm talking about. The New Bedford-Fairhaven Bridge has been obsolete for decades, causing traffic jams and choking off development in the Northern Harbor. I actually wrote a term paper in college calling for the bridge's replacement, and I know that I am not a recent college grad. It's been that long. But since we last met like this, our advocacy finally worked. The state has begun a for-real planning process that puts the bridge on the pathway to replacement. So that's a long list, but it's kind of the point. This year marks the culmination of years of effort by a whole lot of people on stuff that will have changed the trajectory of the city. And any one of these projects in a given year would be a big deal. And so it's really exciting to see it all come together. As mayor, I have been fortunate to have had the support and guidance of people inside and outside of city government of high intelligence and broad experience. But the key in getting all of this done was not brains or expertise. These projects can be complicated, financially and politically, but they're not rocket science. They get done mostly out of persistence, which is sometimes in short supply in government. Big projects are hard because they can stall or fall apart in any number of ways, and in government circles, responsibility can be deflected more easily than it can in the private sector. Those who contributed to the success of the projects I just described bought into a vision, worked as a team, and stuck with it. This year, 2023, we have a lot to show for our efforts, from which all of us can and should draw pride and confidence. But as I said, this is not an ordinary time, and that's in part because one might say, well, New Bedford has completed or is nearing completion of much of what it set out to do. So now what? The now what question is anxiety provoking because it implies that what's ahead is unknown, and it's natural to be fearful of the unknown. And there's enough to be anxious about these days. Inflation is not about to end tomorrow. Neither is that major European land war or America's political divisions. And we haven't even begun to understand the potentially profound implications of emerging technologies, such that part of me feels compelled to offer a disclaimer that last year at this time would have sounded absurd. That is, this speech was not written by ChatGPT. So yes, there indeed is much uncertainty in the world. And I don't venture to offer any answers to all of it, except to say that we have just proven to ourselves and everybody else in the last decade that there's a whole lot we can do in Greater New Bedford to improve the lives of our residents, even when the rest of the world has become messy. In an ever-connected world where the best ideas are shared freely across vast physical and cultural expanses, it seems almost paradoxical that local decision-making by municipal government in partnership with the private sector and residents has demonstrated itself here in the US and around the world to be more effective at getting things done, at getting results. The reason why things still can get done at the local level can be summed up in one word: trust. At the local level, government officials, members of the press, and anyone with official or private authority has to interact with everyone else. That's what we're doing today. Now, you can be more confident about whom you can trust when you can look them in the eye, or if you know their friends and family, or where they live, or if you know which blood pressure medications they're on because you see them in line at CVS. There's no escaping scrutiny. Not that I would know anything about that. My point is that with local government, you can know what you're getting, and cities can improve by leveraging opportunities to build trust. Trust is the oxygen of civic engagement. With enough of it, we can establish common purpose, understand mutual motives, and accomplish a whole lot together. So the answer to the what now question is we should keep doing what we're doing. Together, we're always building that city we envisioned, a city that is the cultural, economic, and political center of a distinct and proud region, a city with a diverse economy that offers opportunity for everyone who seeks it, a city with a highly caring, professional, and efficient municipal government that commands the confidence of taxpayers, a city recognized for its physical beauty, cultural richness, and the compassion of its residents, and where everyone feels like they belong. Our work toward this common vision entails 3 lines of collective effort. First, we must make the most of our competitive advantages to attract and grow capital to create job opportunities for our residents. Second, we must nurture a high quality of life, both as an end in itself and as a means of attracting investment. And third, we must reinforce our sense of place, which energizes us to do the work to improve it. Let's take a look at where we are in each one. So no city can sustain itself in the long run if it isn't economically competitive. It bears emphasizing that we in Greater New Bedford are competing in a global economy for investment and jobs. And if we don't compete effectively, they'll go elsewhere, as our city has come to realize the hard way over the years. Growing our regional economy and the jobs that would come with it requires us to focus on our advantages. That is to say, we need to double down on the things that we're already good at. In New Bedford, more than anything else, that means our maritime economy. The port is the primary economic driver of the region because it offers advantages to the various industries that call it home, including commercial fishing, recreational boating, ferry service, certain lines of international cargo, and as we're already seeing, offshore wind. The impending arrival of offshore wind has enabled us in recent years to secure public and private investment in the port, the likes of which we have not seen since the whaling era. There have been hundreds of millions of dollars of port investment over the last several years, with more to come, all to support the fishing, wind, and other maritime industries. The construction cranes and barges up and down the waterfront these days and for years to come are emblems of growth and job creation. None of this could have happened without the work of the Port Authority, now under the leadership of Gordon Carr, to plan and oversee these projects. On top of this foundation of port infrastructure, we are building the scaffolding to support a thriving and resilient maritime economy. As America's top commercial fishing port, we already have the country's best maritime workforce. But thanks to Bristol Community College, Mass Hire Greater New Bedford, and Greater New Bedford Voc Tech, we're creating more formal pipelines of workers to support the competitiveness of all these industries. The Port Authority also helps shape national and state policies relevant to our maritime businesses. It is a leading voice for national fishing policy, and it has been instrumental in the effort to reduce conflict between the fishing and offshore wind industries in federal waters. Along with the New Bedford Ocean Cluster, it has advocated most notably for state policies to promote offshore wind development here through the state's electricity solicitation process. And on this front, I want to thank Governor Healy for her announcement just yesterday that essentially adopts our position concerning these incentives. I have no doubt that it's going to lead to more investment here. Now, one of the reasons why the port has been successful, from the whaling days to our present preeminence in fishing, is that it has always been a center of innovation. Through the work of the Ocean Cluster, headed up by Jen Downing and chaired by former Mayor John Bullard, we are helping to create new platforms in which innovation can occur by connecting operating companies, entrepreneurs, and research institutions, and providing support necessary for business formation. And finally, the Ocean Cluster is promoting New Bedford wherever investors may be found. Now, don't tell anyone, but at the major offshore wind industry conferences, we're often the only American city represented, the only one. So keep that under your hat. And investment is starting to arrive as a result, and more will. So again, our goal, simply stated, is to establish New Bedford as the top blue economy city on the East Coast. And we will do that by out-hustling everybody else. Our effort to support a vibrant, diversified, and inclusive economy, by the way, is hardly limited to the waterfront. Our anchor institutions are on solid ground. The Zeiterion Theater, the Whaling Museum, and the Whaling Museum are planning major renovations, and we're contributing to long-term investments at the zoo, the Roach Jones Duff House, the James Arnold Mansion, and the Madeiran Heritage Museum, all pillars of our cultural economy. Investing in arts and culture is central to our economic development plan, in part because it has long been one of New Bedford's economic strengths. That's why we've directed over $1 million in seed funding to individual artists through our cultural fund. And it's no surprise that thanks to the work of our creative strategist, Margot Saulnier, and the city's numerous working artists, that New Bedford was recognized this year by Americans for the Arts with its National Leadership Award. They have put New Bedford on the map as a place where the arts are everywhere. The city's artists themselves are small businesses, and to a person, they would tell you that no local economy can succeed if it isn't fertile ground for small businesses. Using federal relief funds, we've sought to help accelerate the emergence of small businesses from the pandemic and its fallout. In particular, Derek Santos and Ramon Silva, the EDC, with the support of its chairman, Tony Sapienza, have launched 2 new programs, MB Forward and MB 100, to help existing businesses get back to normal again, and to provide seed funding to get new ventures off the ground. And both programs are already having an impact. In addition, the storefront improvement program is beginning to bear fruit. You're seeing new facades like those at Coastal Provisions, Tia Maria's, and the West End Grill come online, with many more on their way. A total of 75 across the city are in line to receive funding, whose facelifts will energize those businesses themselves, but also the neighborhoods they operate in. I want to thank the entire City Council for their support of small businesses, and in particular, Councilors Ian Abreu, Maria Gesta, Scott Lima, and Brad Markey for their support of these efforts to cultivate small business. It has been said that small businesses are the spice of city life, and we want our small business community to know that New Bedford is a city where they can thrive. It bears noting, too, that our largest manufacturers, such as Joseph Abboud, the Acushnet Company, and Precise, are all having strong years. South Coast Health is in terrific shape right now under Ray Kruger's leadership. Meanwhile, we're getting the Advanced Manufacturing Campus back on track at the municipal golf course as we reconfigure the layout and review potential zoning changes. Despite its many hurdles along the way, we are going to make that project happen. Now, on the matter of manufacturing, I want to give a special shout out to Ken Joblin, the CEO of Brittany Dye. Since World War II, his company has been the best in the world at finishing fabrics for the military. When Ken learned last year that the city would be welcoming refugees from Afghanistan, he called me and he said, "Tell them I have a job for them. I want to help." Since then, he has hired no fewer than 10 of the refugees, and that steady income has enabled them to get a firmer footing in the United States. And what's also cool is that the company is a defense contractor, so it's another opportunity for them to support America's interests. So please join me. You guys clap prematurely, so this is the... Please join me now in thanking Ken for throwing his doors open to these newest Americans. And while we're at it, I also want to welcome DeBerry, the wife of one of Ken's employees, along with her brother Khalid. The family narrowly escaped the Taliban 2 years ago. And to our great benefit, they resettled here in New Bedford and are actively contributing to the city. The Berry service as a translator has been instrumental to resettling Afghans across the Northeast, and many in greater New Bedford were thoroughly impressed and grateful for her efforts to produce the Afghan Women's Arts Project in February at the main library. It was terrific. You haven't seen it, it's still there, go take a look. I also want to thank her in front of everybody for that spicy vegetable dish she made for me for my birthday, which was hot. Actually, it was really hot, but it was really good. It was really good. Thank you. So the second pillar of our strategy concerns the city's quality of life. Successful cities provide services that enable the well-being of their residents. The starting point, of course, is to secure their physical safety. The fallout of the pandemic has posed unusual challenges on public safety agencies across America. In particular, police staffing levels have fallen to their lowest point in decades across urban America, and New Bedford is no exception. The recent backlash against policing has prompted many officers to retire early or to leave for suburban departments, and it has dried the pipeline of new recruits. In many cities, this has contributed to a dramatic surge in gun violence. I'm grateful to report that that has happened here, but there is work to be done. The thrust of our efforts going forward will be to increase predictive patrolling in hotspot areas and to intensify our efforts to have the court system hold repeat offenders pending trial, especially those who've been involved in domestic violence. And we're grateful for our efforts of our officers, of course, as well as District Attorney Tom Quinn and his office on that particular front. The solution to the staffing crunch won't happen overnight, but Chief Oliver has taken some important steps to recruit new officers, including by offering a $5,000 signing bonus. Current attitudes in some quarters about policing are a real challenge for America's cities, which will take time to run its course. But we could all do well by reminding young people that police officers perform work that is fundamental to the preservation of a free society. On the matter of public safety, I want to salute the work of our fire department under Chief Scott Kruger, which has been exceptional in its rapid and skillful responses to a recent spate of fires. Now, the same can be said for the life-saving work of our EMS department under Mike Thomas, as well as fire victim assistance by community services under Cynthia Walquist and emergency management under Brian Nobriga. Theirs is a strong team. They've saved a lot of lives. Now, please. For all of our public safety services, as you saw in the video, we just committed over $1 million in investments in equipment, facilities, and training. All three agencies are completing strategic planning processes. And with these new investments, they are really well positioned. They're going to be very well positioned to take on the challenges in the years ahead. Their work will continue, I should note, continue to be complemented by the Neighborhood Task Force under John Floor and Lindsay Carter Montero, and Inspectional Services under Danny Romanowitz, whose enforcement together of the building code has ensured that landlords take the responsibility for their properties, which is so important to everything else we do. All of these agencies continue to support the work of the Health Department and the Greater New Bedford Opioid Task Force in dealing with the scourge of addiction. As a public health challenge, the pandemic stole the headlines from the opioid epidemic for a while. But the reality is that the isolation caused by the pandemic led to more addiction. We are committed to an approach that will prevent addiction in the first place and get people back on track to a more functioning life. Now, any conversation about the city's quality of life these days would be incomplete without turning to the issue of housing. It used to be only a big city issue, and now it's an every city issue. Far too many people are getting squeezed out of their apartments, and housing prices, even as they've somewhat leveled off, are far higher than they were before the pandemic, and it's happening all across America. Although housing prices are being driven largely by national economic forces, we need to promote housing production to stabilize prices here. And that's what the housing plan we just announced last month is about. I would like to thank Josh Amaral and his team for putting together that very comprehensive piece. Now, we have a pipeline of approximately 250 more housing units, but still more will be needed. And we will speed permitting, get vacant properties back on the market, and expand incentives for new housing construction to increase the number of units coming onto the market. And that's what's going to do it for us in the long run. But everyone should be clear about something. The housing crunch in Greater New Bedford is a region-wide problem. New Bedford suburbs need to do their part, as virtually all of the rental housing in the region is situated in the city. I look forward to a discussion with the towns about how everyone in Greater New Bedford can benefit from a more broad-based approach to housing attainability. And we in the city, let it be known, are prepared to lend our technical expertise to the towns for this purpose. Relatedly, too many in our region currently struggle with homelessness. We provide high-quality support for those experiencing these difficulties to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring, but we still need to invest in resources that help residents before they find themselves at risk. Recently, we committed to an unprecedented level of funding for emergency rental vouchers as we continue to upgrade our mental health and opioid outreach work, and the folks who are involved in that work extremely hard. But it's not an overnight exercise. I'm confident that we will continue to make progress on homelessness, primarily because we have such a strong partnership with the city's homeless service providers network. They work hand in glove with the city to get the most desperate among us back on their feet. Now, to sustain a city and to help make it a pleasant place to live, one of our top priorities has long been to reinvest in the public realm. I believe our residents deserve to live in a clean city with well-designed and visually appealing public spaces and effective infrastructure. The record shows that we've followed through. For starters, we've been investing mightily in the city's roads. When I got into office, the city had no capital plan. Among other things, this meant that there was no routine investment of city funds in roadways. None. We relied only on state funds, which weren't and aren't nearly enough. And eventually, it became evident to everyone that the roads were in bad shape. Our annual local commitment to road maintenance has gone from where it had been, which was zero, to $3 million annually. We're playing catch-up, but the progress will eventually become plain for everyone to see. But we've also invested millions to make sure that the city's drinking water is safe and affordable, and that our wastewater system will continue to function as our residents expect, and that both are resilient to the effects of climate change. I want to thank Jamie Pont and his team for their thorough and diligent management of these major infrastructure investments above and below ground. Now, the city's public spaces also must look good. They can't just function well, they gotta look good. And that's why we planted 4,000 trees, and we're about to start in on another 1,000 more. Enforced the trash laws, wiped out graffiti, and built 5 new neighborhood parks. The Harbor Walk and Cove Walk have not only become popular neighborhood amenities, but regional destinations. It's why we've raised design standards, so what gets built looks great, like the new South End Public Safety Center, the Jacobs School, and soon the new pedestrian bridge by the Whales Tooth parking lot. A city that looks great is one that proclaims for everyone that it cares about itself. Because our residents deserve a sustained commitment to a high level of appearance, we need to institutionalize our approach. It just can't come and go with mayoral administrations. So today we are releasing a standard of appearance for the public realm, which is a set of policies that seek to maintain the appearance and condition of the city's built environment. And there are a few copies left, and we'll get it on the website. This set of policies establishes in clear terms what is expected of city government in managing litter and blight, the upkeep of open space, and the elevating of our design standards. Our goal is to make New Bedford the cleanest center city in New England. I believe we can do it. And frankly, we're already pretty far down the line. But if we work together, we can make it happen. But it'll depend on this. As the policies make clear, residents need to play an active role. City government, after all, isn't a maid service. We're not going to mow your lawn or trim your hedges. And it isn't too much to expect residents and businesses to keep up their own properties. As in nearly every city, everyone's property is conspicuous to everyone else. They're all right there. So, and it's also not too much to ask residents to let the city know when something needs to be addressed. Now, with these mutual obligations in mind, the new policy, in effect, proposes a covenant between municipal government and residents. Each must work with one another to sustain an appearance about which we can all be proud. Now, to make it easier for residents to discharge their end of the bargain, I am also announcing today that the city will adopt a 311 system. By this time next year, residents will be able to dial 311 and request non-emergency public realm services, potholes, fallen tree branches, graffiti. I believe that 311 systems shouldn't just be for big cities. Ours will enable our residents to work in tandem with the city government to sustain an appearance that our residents deserve. Now, to provide these services effectively, we of course need to manage our finances wisely. Despite our being able to maintain a strong bond rating, and even though we've been able to ease the pressure temporarily with the use of federal ARPA funds, money remains tight. There are many reasons for this, and I'll have an opportunity to offer greater detail in my budget address in 2 weeks. But it should come as no surprise that inflation has hit municipal expenses, especially salaries, and that we've struggled to fill important positions as a result. As we've discussed many times before, the rise of pension and healthcare obligations are crowding out our ability to pay for core city services, and they have imposed too much on taxpayers. Together, these two obligations, pensions and healthcare, will rise $4 million from last year, just 1 year. Healthcare is going up by 10%, and those increases are projected to continue over the next several years. So it's unsustainable. I am committed to working with the council so that the city can manage these obligations, but we can't avoid tough choices. Let me talk about our schools. Our city's quality of life, as well as its economic competitiveness, central to both of them, is our ability to offer our city's children pathways to opportunity through our public schools. The New Bedford Public Schools have come a long way in the last few years. The days when the needs of adults were put before children have receded in the rearview mirror. We now have a school system that is clear in its academic goals, manages taxpayer dollars reliably, and has raised the standards of academic instruction. There have been long-needed changes to collective bargaining agreements, a revamped curriculum, and major upgrades to facilities, including this gym you're in. Now, while we have benefited from increased state funding thanks to the passage of the State Student Opportunity Act and the infusion of federal dollars that has led to a construction boom of school renovation, the last 3 years have been trying. More than any other aspect of city operations, the pandemic disrupted classroom learning. It will take some time to recover from the learning loss and the emotional strain borne by students. I want to thank Superintendent Anderson's steady leadership throughout his entire tenure. But especially during the pandemic, for which there was no playbook. He was a stabilizing presence in a most unstable time for faculty, staff, and students, and he kept the district moving forward. I likewise want to thank Deputy Superintendent Karen Tredup for her many years of dedicated service to our schools. We're fortunate to have Assistant Superintendent Andrew O'Leary and former Duval School Principal Darcy Ungst to step up and lead this transition, and as we hasten the district's emergence from the pandemic. The immediate focus will be to deal with chronic absenteeism, which skyrocketed during the pandemic and has not nearly come back down. This is already affecting the graduation rate. We need to get kids plugged back in and fast as we continue to do the work of improving the district overall. Now, the work of the school committee's new academic achievement subcommittee will be key in this effort. The subcommittee's purpose is to facilitate a clearer public understanding of how schools are performing. With the help of an academic dashboard, parents will be able to get information they need to support their children, and the school department will be able to share freely how it's working toward the goals it has set for itself. I wish to note that we are proud of the work being done at both of our city's major high schools. Under Bernadette's, always on a first-name basis, under Principal Coelho's steady leadership at New Bedford High, the passing rate on advanced placement tests still remains strong, and students continue to compete successfully for admissions to America's top colleges. 2 more kids to Harvard in the senior class this year. Well, over at Voc Tech, we've seen tremendous work in preparing students for tomorrow's workforce and collaborating with the business community to keep their programs relevant and competitive. Voc Tech will play a big part in our effort to compete for offshore wind job investment and to grow jobs, and we have great confidence in their ability to deliver. So thank you, Mike Watson. So on the subject of Voc Tech, by the way, I wanted to give a shout out to the Voc Tech softball team under Coach Craig Soares, whose team won the state championship in dramatic fashion this past spring. The team's second state championship in the last 4 years. He and his staff put in the work necessary to develop a strong softball program, and it certainly has paid off, and we are proud of what you and your players have accomplished. In administering city government, we strive to base our decisions on a careful evaluation of available information and in light of our understanding of the city's interests. At a time when trust in government institutions is waning and resources are scarce, this deliberate, evidence-based approach to governing is what I believe our city needs and deserves. At the same time, we can't lose sight of what keeps cities going and makes life in them worth living, which is the love of the place itself. I do what I do because I love New Bedford. And if you are here today, for certain, you do too. Sometimes we beat ourselves up a little too much or are willing to accept the knee-jerk judgment of others. But make no mistake, New Bedford is a special place in America. Your city, our city, is worthy of our full devotion. And when you love where you live, you'll commit acts of love on its behalf and make it an even better place. And maybe through that effort, improve yourself in some small way. Exactly 70 years ago next month, a young man from New Bedford had a moment to consider what he might contribute. He was dug in behind a wall of sandbags on a jagged ridgeline just north of the demilitarized zone on the Korean Peninsula. He and his fellow soldiers of the Army's 2nd Infantry Division gazed across the desolate, battle-torn valley below, where hundreds of Chinese and North Korean soldiers were massing. Days of artillery barrages signaled that an attack was coming, as it had on countless other hills where over the previous 3 years, thousands of Americans died in brutal, often hand-to-hand combat. As he crouched beside his machine gun, he did what so many in similar situations do. He prayed. This is what he said: God, if you get me out of this, I will go back to New Bedford and do a whole lot of good. Well, as it turned out, seemingly out of the blue, then there in June of 1953, the armistice was announced before the attack came, ending active hostilities in the Korean War. Peter Brito went back to New Bedford, and for the last 70 years, he has fulfilled that promise. Now, Peter, I got to tell him what you did. Peter's name is synonymous with youth basketball in the city of New Bedford. Mr. Brito, as he is widely known, ran the Monty Park League for over 30 years and the New Bedford Youth United League for years afterward. He coached pretty much everywhere in the city at some point along the way. The Boys and Girls Club, the CYO, the old Bay State League, which I used to play in, and various other leagues. His annual tournaments at Monty's, which continue today on the court that bears his name, have always been a major summer event as they brought teams from New York, Boston, and Cape Verde to match up against New Bedford's best. But for him, it's never been about winning or losing games. It's been about the kids whose lives he touched, thousands of them over the years, boys and girls. With the support of his wife Avis and the rest of his family, he used basketball as a teaching tool, an instrument through which players, many of whom had little to fall back on, could learn perseverance and teamwork, which was much more important than their free throw percentage. He is revered by many in our city across generations because he unfailingly has led with his values and treated every kid like his own, And now, I ask everyone to join me in thanking Peter for making his city a stronger place, one child at a time. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as Peter set out to do, may each of us find in our own way to do a whole lot of good for the city we love. Thank you, and God bless the city of New Bedford.
So, Mr. Mayor, thank you again. A major event like this requires the support of many professionals to make it successful, and we would like to recognize a few others for their involvement today. We have New England Showtime Productions, Reynolds DeWalt Company for printing the invitations, New Bedford High School students and the staff for helping us today, LaFrance Hospitality for preparing today's delicious meal, the Mayor's Office for their assistance in organizing the program, Sergio from Bad Monkey Pics for the wonderful photography, and all of our media partners for their participation in covering this event. And now, please rise as the New Bedford High School JROTC retires the colors.
Mark time. March. Guard. Halt. Left. Face. Retrieve the colors. Left. Face. Forward. March.
Thank you again for joining us this afternoon, and have a wonderful rest of your day.